Hello, my name is Ritu Sampij, and in this presentation, Dr. Leslie Frankel, Caroline Benacuno, and I will be speaking about our research regarding the relationship between COVID-related parenting stress and parent mental health. First off, we hypothesized that if there's an increase in COVID-related parenting stress, then there will be an associated increase in parent mental health symptomatology. But in order to examine whether this hypothesis holds true, we first had to come up with a way to measure parents' perceived level of COVID-related parenting stress. In our opinion, COVID-related parenting stress was so unique to families during the pandemic that it warranted its own novel scale. As a result, our major goals for this study included using exploratory factor analysis to create a new scale regarding parents' COVID-related parenting stress, and then to examine whether our hypothesis holds true regarding the relationship between such situational stress and parent mental health symptomatology. There are numerous ways that COVID-related parenting stress is unique to parents during the pandemic. With the rise of this infectious disease, parents became suddenly responsible for protecting their families from the virus, as well as for dealing with the absence of childcare resources and children's school closures. They also became increasingly socially isolated from their traditional support systems because of the quarantine and stay-at-home orders. Also, many parents experienced a shutdown of their workplaces, and some parents even lost their jobs due to the pandemic. All of these unique pandemic-specific stressors contribute to and exacerbate parents' perceived level of stress during the pandemic. Here we have used Bronfenbrenner's ecological systems theory to show how the systems that families existed in before COVID-19 changed drastically during the pandemic. COVID-related parenting stress is far different from normative family stress because of these unique changes to families' environments. For instance, schools transitioned to an online setting, childcare centers were closed, offices were closed, children's activities were canceled, and families entered quarantine, which contributed to their social isolation. With the rise of virtual learning in place of traditional in-person schooling, with the rise of telemedicine in place of visits to the pediatrician's office, and with parents' jobs becoming remote, typical everyday functions, which were once separated into different environments, suddenly merged into one single setting, which was the home. On the left is a textbook figure of Bronfenbrenner's ecological systems theory that is representative of families before the pandemic. Because of the unique changes to families' environments, the formerly separated systems, such as the exosystem, mesosystem, and microsystem, have all blended together in an unprecedented way, which leads to an increase in parenting stress. This uniqueness therefore warranted a novel scale to measure parents' level of COVID-related parenting stress in light of the changes to families' everyday environments. In line with the sudden changing of systems, parents were also required to manage several roles, such as being an employee, an educator for their children, and a caregiver for their families. And this contributed to parents' experience of stress, increased COVID-related parenting stress, and to the uniqueness of the pandemic situation. In essence, because of the aforementioned unique stress-inducing changes to families' lives, especially parents' lives during the pandemic, there is a pressing need to measure parents' perceived level of COVID-related parenting stress, which led us to develop this novel scale. Next, Caroline will discuss the results of the study.
Thank you, Rita, for that introduction. As mentioned earlier, my name is Caroline, and I'm going to go through the results section of our study, starting with the sample size. Our sample size constituted of 119 parents, of which the majority were female, that's about 54%, and the majority of the parents too were white, which is about 51%, and their average age was 36. For the children, the majority were male, which is about 54%, and female were 46%. So we first performed an explanatory factor analysis to create a COVID-related parenting stress scale. The COVID-related parenting scale had 11 items, of which 8 items loaded into the family stress subscale, and their factor loadings range from about 0.49 to about 0.73. Then the 3 items loaded onto the job of financial stress subscale, and the factor loadings range from 0.45 to about 0.67. So in order to test our hypothesis, we carried out 4 multiple regression models. Our main dependent variable was parental mental health, which constituted of anxiety and psychological distress. Then the main predictor was COVID-related parenting stress scale, which constituted of job stress subscale and family stress subscale. Our control variables were income level, educational level, and parental gender. Then initially, we had also carried out a moderated multiple regression analysis in order to test the effect of child temperament between the relationship of parental mental health and COVID-related parenting stress, and there were no significant findings. So for table 1, our main dependent variable was anxiety, and we had carried out 2 models of which anxiety was a dependent variable. So for model 1, we had 4 predictors, of which the main predictor was COVID-related parenting stress scale, and then the control variables. Only COVID-related parenting stress scale and gender were statistically significant. That is a 1-unit increase in COVID-related parenting stress was expected to increase anxiety by 0.035 after controlling for the other variables in the model. Then for gender, female parents compared to male parents were expected to increase anxiety by 0.729 after controlling for the other variables in the model. Then for model 2, there were 5 predictors, of which the main predictors were job stress, family stress, and then the controls were educational level, income level, and gender. Only job stress and gender were statistically significant. That is, a 1-unit increase in job stress was expected to increase anxiety by 0.062 after controlling for the other variables in the model. Likewise, female parents compared to male parents were expected to increase anxiety by 0.788 after controlling for the other variables in the model. In a nutshell, it means that COVID-related parenting stress and gender increased anxiety. And for table 2, the main dependent variable was psychological distress, and we also performed 2 models for that. So for model 3, only COVID-related parenting stress was statistically significant. That is, a 1-unit increase in COVID-related parenting stress was expected to increase psychological distress by 0.156 after controlling for the other variables in the model. In model 4, family stress was statistically significant. That is, a 1-unit increase in family stress was expected to increase psychological distress by 0.144 after controlling for the other variables in the model. In summary, COVID-related parenting stress increased psychological distress. Thank you. I'll pass the next section to Dr. Franco.
COVID-related parenting stress seems like an important thing to look at. It's related to parent anxiety symptomatology, as well as psychological distress. And that's even after controlling for things like education, income level, and gender. what we saw is that some families experience COVID-related parenting stress. Some parents experience this more so than others. And we believe in our lab that some parents will continue to experience this stress more than others going forward. Now, we would never want for there to be another pandemic that impacts families as much as COVID has. But we do know that other events are going to impact families. And sometimes we believe that specific measures are important in order to look at parent stress during these events. So for example, after a certain hurricane or natural disaster, tsunami, something like that, it might be important for researchers to develop specific measures that measure parent stress during that unique event. During COVID, it probably was important to look at the specific nature of this event and how it was impacting parent stress, rather than to look at more general existing measures of parent stress. And then, the reason behind that is to intervene in helpful ways that really target the areas of concern and stress for parents. So in our lab, what we're doing right now is we're also looking at how COVID-related parenting stress and perceptions of COVID-related parenting stress are related to parent-child mealtime interactions and children's self-regulation of eating. We're also teaming up with Dr. Allison Master, and we're examining differences in parent perceptions of COVID-related parenting stress across different learning modalities. So across parents of children who have their children in person versus online and hybrid. We're also looking at parent mental health symptomatology across these different learning modalities as well. And we think that'll be really interesting. We have differences in learning outcomes across learning modalities, but it's also really important to look at parent stress and parent perceptions of, stress across these different learning modalities. So we want to thank you guys so much for listening to our presentation.